This program is presented by Smart Bazaar.
Yeah, this is Dr. Rosando Ribero in Nairobi. There were a lot of Goans who migrated, and many migrated to Bombay, to Cochin, to Karachi, uh, to Calicut for different times, for different reasons, for better opportunities, especially in the British Africa. There were a lot of Goans, and on British ships, there were a lot of Goans. Why were there a lot of Goans on British ships? Because the Goan Christians did not have problem with beef or pork. If they employ anybody who's a Hindu in Mumbai, they would have a problem with beef, and a Muslim would have a problem with pork. So the Goan Catholics were most suitable for the British ships, and they became butlers. Every village in Goa had something called a kud in Mumbai. It was a house they rented, a small room they rented, where all these sailors would go stay there and then catch their ship. And they were called kud. And this kud still exists. Of course, they are not used for this purpose now, but every village has a little room. And there were many who were in Africa. This is a doctor who worked in Nairobi, and he brought a zebra to Goa. And he used to go on zebra, and then he sold a zebra for 800 rupees in 1907 to the Bombay Zoo. I have a neighbor called Vincent Machado. So I went to Vincent Machado, and because Goa's houses, Goa's families are oozing with stories. And they are so lovely stories, they can make lovely books. This Vincent Machado, I asked him, where did you work? He said, I worked in Tanzania, and I was in the police. I was a deputy commissioner of police. And he said, at 8 o'clock, I keep looking at the clock. At 8 o'clock, I open my bottle, and I have my whiskey. So I asked him, what do you drink? Royal Stag? Royal Stag? I drink only single malt, he said. Because my children are in America, they bring me. And at 8 o'clock, I pour the drink, and I sip one peg for 2 hours. The British taught me how to drink whiskey, he told me. And then he said, my bosses were not Indians. My bosses were not people from Nairobi. My bosses were English. So he was very proud that he was working for the British. And then he said, then the revolution came. Before the revolution, he said the British were number one citizens. Then the Indians were number two citizens. And the Africans were number three citizens. When the revolution came, he said there was a problem. The Africans became number one. The British became number two. And we became number three. So he had really a problem with this degradation which happened in his status. And then he was given award for his activities as a police commissioner. Though the revolution came, he still continued to be a deputy commissioner. So this is his award. So we have such lovely stories. This is a story which is told to me by Savia Vegas, who is there today. This is a photograph of a bridal couple from Chichni, I think from South Goa. And this photograph was taken about 3-4 months after the marriage. At that time, to click a picture, you needed some 30, 40 or 50 rupees. And the gentleman, though he was a land-owning family, they didn't have that cash. So he did not have the photograph during the marriage. So the wife started nagging. He said, you didn't take a picture, marriage photograph. We want a marriage photograph. So ultimately, after 3-4 months, he organized that money and called a photographer from Margao. But by this time, she already was pregnant, and she could not get into the wedding gown. So this photograph is taken, and Savia confided to me that the back is open. And you can see from the face of the gentleman that he's not too happy to spend that 50 rupees. You would say that these are some kind of landlords or some royal people, but these are actually laborers in Mozambique from Goa who used to go to studios and just dress up in all this attire and have a picture just for the picture. So many photographs like this. We have a friend, Dr. Rock Ribello. Now, Dr. Rock Ribello, I casually, he has a nice house. So I said, did you have any slaves in your house? He said, no, we didn't have any slaves. And then I said, can I check your albums? So I went to his house. He was kind enough to bring out an album and allowed me to examine it. And then there was a picture of a slave. So the family had slaves. And then he told me a very beautiful story. They own a building in Panjim. And how the building came to be owned by them is a lovely story. I don't know whether Rock is here today. But then his great-grandfather, this guy here, he was on a ship from Lisbon to Goa, and on the same ship was the Portuguese governor who was coming to take over as a new governor of Goa. And the governor had loose motions, and the ship doctor could not treat it. And this great-grandfather of Rock was not a doctor, but he tried giving him some Ayurvedic medicines which he was carrying, and the governor was immediately cured. He was so happy, he said, when you come to Goa, please come and meet me. So Rock's great-grandfather goes to meet this governor, and he said, what do you want? He said, give me a plot in Panjim. So he gets a plot in Panjim, and they own a building there now. I think Rock must never have got so much money, a plot for treating loose motions. Yeah. So Goa's liberation is the last thing I will tell you about. I will not go into the details of it, but I will talk about some 2-3 interesting aspects of Goa's liberation. Ram Manar Lohia was the one who first asked the Portuguese to go out, 18 June, that is still celebrated today. On 9th of December 1961, the Indian government took the decision to send army to liberate Goa. Here is Krishna Menon and Nehru. Krishna Menon was the defense minister, and Nehru the prime minister. And then on 19th of December, Goa was liberated. Well, I will not go into details of the stories of Goa's liberation, but I will only show you 2 interesting things. This is Libby Lobo Sardesai. I don't know whether she has come today. I had invited her. She is 100 years old. And this is her picture with her husband, Vaman Sardesai, who later became an ambassador. He was appointed an ambassador. But what they did was they started a radio station which helped the freedom fighters get all the news. And the radio station, the transmitter was in a truck in Castle Rock, in the Sahyadris. And the 2 of them stayed there giving information about what is happening in Goa. And then when the Indian government decided to liberate Goa, they were invited to find out about what the people think. And they went and they were consulted. And then when the Goa was liberated, Libby was in Belgaum. When they were in the mountain, in the hills in Sahyadris, here she writes that she shed blood because of the leeches. Leeches took a lot of blood because they were wearing gumboots, but still leeches would absorb blood. So now, when she was in Belgaum, the chief of the army asked, what do you want? She just said casually, I would like to go high up in the sky in an aeroplane and tell my Goans that Goa is liberated. And he took it seriously and he decided he will organize it. So they organized a small plane. Libby was put in that plane with a loudspeaker. It was a small plane, and Libby flew over Goa announcing that we are free now. And then before doing that, the army officer asked her, maybe there are some Portuguese still there. The plane may be shot. And she replied, maybe it will be shot, but then I will fall in a free land. And the spirit she has is incredible. So Libby Lobo is living just next to the church, and she's 100 years old. And this is a painting done by Nishant Saldana, I think, who is here, who just to celebrate Libby going in this airplane. 19 December, the surrender of the Portuguese was signed by Vasao da Silva, who was the last. And one who was heading the Indian side was Mr. Thapar. Prem Nath Thapar is the father of Karan Thapar, who is a famous television journalist. And I actually wanted to create a museum of Goa's liberation, and asked him for the army uniform of his father, which exists but is not at his home. This is the Portuguese chief of army here. This is a surrender. This is the letter of surrender, which was signed by Vasao da Silva. The last story I will tell you is of this man, Moan Rane. Moan Rane, in 1955, killed a Portuguese soldier who trampled on an Indian flag. And then he decided to loot the Betim police station. And while he was attempting that, he was shot, injured. He was arrested, and he spent 14 years in Portuguese jail. 6 years in solitary confinement in Lisbon. I visited that place where he was kept in solitary confinement. And Moan Rane was a friend because he worked when he came back to Goa in 1969, he studied law and worked with my friend's father as a junior lawyer. So Moan Rane has a very nice story to tell. And this story even sums up what should be our approach to history. Moan Rane was taken to the Portuguese jail, and there were 5 inmates of that cell where he was. 3 of them were Portuguese, and 2 were from Africa, from Mozambique. and all of them were fighting for freedom, for justice. The Portuguese were fighting against Salazar, and the Africans were fighting against the Portuguese against Salazar, and Moan Rane, of course, for the Goa's freedom. And then every morning, uh, every week, there was a rule that they should go to the barber for a shave. And every week he went to the barber. The barber said, "Good morning." He said, "Good morning, Bandai." And that went on. And he said, "First, when I went, I thought that Portuguese were bad people, but I have met these 3 Portuguese inmates. They are very good friends of mine. We have become very close friends." And he learned to speak Portuguese, and he started eating everything. And he became really friendly. And he said, "I was mistaken. The Portuguese are not bad people." And then he was saying good morning to this barber. And one day, when he went, he said, "Good morning." The barber was sort of did not respond. He said, "Good morning." Barber does not respond. And that was 19th of December, 61, when Goa was liberated. And the barber was not very happy. And then the inmates were very happy, and they celebrated. They said, "We make the brooms which were there for sweeping the cell were made microphones, and they made speeches to each other. They danced, and there were 3 cigarettes which they shared between 5 people." That's Mohan Rane. Well, there were a lot of sacrifices were done by many people. We should know our history, but our history should never create any kind of animosity with the present day Christians or present day Portuguese, because present day Christians, the faith has developed. We have to respect all religions, we have to respect all nations, and history should not create any kind of animosity between. I was invited some years ago to create a installation in a garden in Lisbon. The garden is called Tapada das Necesidades. This is a garden next to the Lisbon port. And there is a chapel in this garden. And this chapel was used by every sailor who has sailed from Lisbon harbor to find new land for whatever reason, including Vasco da Gama, including Alfonso de Albuquerque. And they decided to renovate the garden, the municipality of Lisbon. And they invited a few artists from different parts of the world, and I was one of them. And I had to create an installation in this garden. So I said, the Portuguese have changed all the food habit of India. They have changed what we eat. Let me take a poetic revenge on them. I never take revenge, only poetic revenge. And so I took rice from Goa and I planted it in this garden in the shape of the sea root of Vasco da Gama. When the rice sprouted, it did not just sprout rice, it sprouted history. Thank you very much for giving me great attention.
Song and music of Goan musicians, so that their contribution stay in Goa's musical repertoire. Admire the art of Goan artists, and you can have your own, very own Pablo Picasso or Frida Kahlo's. That is where the role of Dr. Subodh Kerkar comes in creating the next plinth for Goan art and artists. Like a true warrior, he has stood his ground and created spaces for art to reach viewing publics, a platform for art to breathe and to grow, and for children to experience this process. I recall maybe a decade ago, on the eve of a major art festival at staff members of Moog flitting on the periphery looking for clues how this was made possible. In 10 years, how the Moog family, which has at its core Subodh, Savita, Sharda, and Siddharth, have grown, not only in terms of its displays, but also in terms of footfalls, which is a very important marker for a museum. Subodh has transformed himself into an artist without discarding his scalpels. I am told that there is a serpentine queue on the day that he sees patients at his clinic. To be able to create a public platform for his art, he has reinvented himself as an entrepreneur. And what a resource he has created in the heart of the industrial center of Pilen. I myself cross many rivers and many undulating roads and crossings to be able to see those displays. The role of artists has become extremely challenging in the time of climate change. Melting ice, rising oceans, forest fires, and seismic changes, and global political predicaments. So let me end this with the last glow of sunset and with a dialogue between people and artist, which my grandmother told me as a folk tale when I was growing up. These are difficult times, said the people to the artist. Said the artist. Will there be painting and singing in these difficult times? Asked the people. Yes, yes, replied the artists in unison. What will you paint and sing in the difficult times? Asked the disenchanted people. We will paint and sing about the difficult times, said all the artists in one strong voice. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
विकसित भारत 2047 एक ध्येय एक सपन गोयचो फुडार बळकट करपाचो भारत देश विकसित करपाचो तुई भी ह्या मोहिमेन वांटेकार जा गोयचो विकास घडोवपाक तुई आपले योगदान दी आपल्यो आयडियाज वा सजेशन्स दिवपाक गोवा ऑनलायन पोर्टलाचेर वचून विजन डॉक्युमेंट तयार करपाक तुझे मोलादीक योगदान दी विकसित भारत 2047